My name is Julie Pearson, Little Thunder. Today is May 17th, 2012, and I'm in Oktaha, Oklahoma, interviewing artist Jeanne Rorex. Jeanne, you're an artist of Cherokee descent, the niece of Willard Stone. You've created a distinctive style focused largely on women, and thank you for taking the time to talk with me today.
Thank you.
Where were you born and where did you grow up?
I was born in Chakotah, Oklahoma, at the hospital down there, and grew up right here on this land. So I was raised about 1/8 of a mile east of here. So that's I've got deep roots. So.
How many siblings in your family?
I have 4 sisters and 1 brother. I'm the youngest of 6.
Is your Cherokee ancestry on your mom or your dad's side?
Both.
Both.
Mm-hmm.
Did you have a lot of contact with your grandparents on either
No,
side?
because I was the youngest, and in fact I was an aunt before I was born. So I was really younger, and both of my mother's parents had died already, and then my grandma and granddad Walker on the dad's side were elderly at that time, and grandma, I remember a few things about her, but not very much before she died. And then granddad was very impressive man. He was tall. He was about, I don't know how tall he was, well over 6 feet. And he wore a hat and never tucked the brim in, it was round. And he rode the tallest horse he had at all times. So,
oh, wow.
but my mother and dad were, I called myself a midlife surprise, because mom was 40 when I was born. So I was the youngest of them. It was like being raised by really good grandparents, because my parents were that age. So it was a different kind of life. And I grew up like I tell people, like a generation before me, because we didn't have running water until I was 16, or a bathroom in the house until I was 16 years old. And so any time anybody wants me to go to some place where there's no electricity, there's no running water, you'll be so outdoorsy, it's like, I've done that, no thanks. I lived that. So anyway, it was an interesting life.
So in terms of earning a living, your folks?
Had cattle, a farm, had about 320 acres, and then we rented a couple other places too. But we did farming and ranching was their source of income. And all of us kids, I don't know if have you ever been raised on a farm or with a farm? That I tell people that we never had a summer vacation, because and we had a small dairy too. So you went, there's milking in the morning and the evening, and then you were busy in the fields. And we didn't just have a garden; we had 2 or 3 gardens and a truck patch. You know what that is, with the watermelons and the cantaloupes and everything, and lots of potatoes. And so we were busy. Then we raised corn and head feed, which some people call maize. What else did we raise? Never did soybeans. I don't know why, but so we were busy all the time.
Working all the time. When did you see your first example of Indian art?
Of paintings, because I always saw Willard's work, but paintings of the flat style, which I dearly love. I don't know the first time I saw it, but I remember the first time I saw what I thought was perfection, and that was Jeanne Hessing's work.
Oh.
Have you ever looked at her things? That is pure flat style, no shading or anything, just a change in colors, just little. She just was wonderful.
Where did you see it? How old were you?
At Five Tribes Museum. I was an adult when I saw it. I guess my main exposure was at Bacone College with Dick West. And,
before we talk about Bacone, can you talk a little bit about going to your uncle's house or being around Willard Stone's work?
We didn't get to see them very often because they're about 50 miles away. And but when I go up there, I just loved seeing that workshop, where he was working, creating, and he'd have some pieces that were finished and have stories for them. And my parents and everybody else be wanting to talk about gardens and all this stuff, which he liked to talk about too. He really did. He was a farm boy, and I'd be looking at his artwork, and then I'd read what his story, and then I'd look at the artwork again, and I realized how important what he was saying, and he was getting to say it in such a simple, beautiful way. So.
And he was your uncle on your mom's side or your dad's?
Yeah, he's on Mom's brother.
Any other family members who were kind of artistically inclined?
No.
And how about you? When did you create your first piece of art?
I think I was in my 40s before I would really call it art. I was so humble. I really was. I didn't have any training. Oktaha school was just, in elementary school when you get to draw something special for Valentine's Day or Christmas and things, I loved that. And I found out that my second grade teacher had kept the work that I had done back then and would show it to each year of her classes. She showed it to my sons when they were in her class later, but as far as artwork, I didn't. I always liked to draw, and I didn't have anybody to teach me anything. It just drew a lot. And I guess when I really got serious about it was when I took a toll painting class. You know what that is? I was 27. I had kids and everything. I took a toll painting class. I was painting on boards and with a pattern. And I found myself changing, kind of getting away from the patterns and kind of doing my own thing. And then I was sitting in this class with these grown women, and I was just appalled at how they didn't take care of their brushes, they didn't take care of their paints. But that was the best training, was that toll painting class for me. I learned so much about handling oil paints, and it was really a good experience. And after that, I thought, well, maybe I'm just a little more serious than most people are about this. So,
it sounds like an artist
and
caring
so that's
about
when I
how they...
applied to Bacone College and got a scholarship. So.
Now, basically, even high school then, no art training, no art classes.
No.
Do you know experience selling?
I bought, after I graduated from high school and I was working in insurance, I bought the famous art school books. I think it's a correspondence class. And those books were great. I didn't do much with the course itself, but the books, I learned a lot about how to do anatomy, and how to divide up the body and how to, the proportions, and then when you do a landscape, your horizon line, if you're going to make the fences look right, how to do that. There was a lot of technical information in those books. Those books were great. I still got them.
So you were working in insurance, but were you kind of experimenting on your own, or just reading the books, or did you draw?
Yeah, for myself, but as far as creating my first artwork, I think before I was, maybe the toll painting class, I got some of those pieces I really liked, but I hadn't really started till Bacone, so.
And so you enrolled at Bacone. At that point, your children are pretty young because you had a family fairly young. Yeah. Were you having to support yourself while you were going to school at Bacone?
Well, I was married.
Okay.
Kenneth Rorex is my first husband.
Right.
And we got married. I was 19. He was 26. So, and then the boys were. I was 22 and 23, I think, when the boys were born. And so I was helping support the family, but I got out of the insurance when I started having kids. So
by the time you went to Bacone, you were able to sort of focus on your. Mm-hmm. So what was that like, studying under Dick West?
That was one of life's blessings, I think. He was. Did you ever meet Dick West? He was. He was a big man. I mean, he was physically large, and this voice that was so deep and strong, and he tried to intimidate you a little bit sometimes, you know. But I was raised by those. My dad was kind of like that, so it didn't bother me at all. But he didn't scare me. But he had braids, and he was just. It was a blessing to get to study under that man. He really was such a good teacher. He didn't put anyone down. He'd tease them, but he didn't put anybody down. And he was the first person that said I had my own style. And you talk about touching your heart when Dick West said you had your own style. And so he would just guide me, you know, like anatomy and things like that, but didn't try to change what I was doing. And when I did work for him, I felt like I did works of art. So it was wonderful.
So you were doing the flat style, but already with some of the adaptations that you'd incorporated on your own, or what was your early
was truly flat
style like?
Flat, you know what flat? Everybody knows what flat style is, I think, but it was. I was trying to be pure flat style at that time, which is not an easy thing, but lots and lots of details. And one of the pieces I did at Bacon was called "The Chosen Leader." And you mentioned that I did a lot of work with women, and this one was because you do research, and Dick said, well, the closest thing was like the Iroquois for Cherokee, and the Iroquois, the man was the chief, but the women chose the chief, and so that it was called, and they would hand him a set of deer antlers, you know, that he was awarded the chief. And so I did a very flat style, very, it's kind of stiff when I look at it now, but it was a woman handing the ear horns to the guy, and he's got the head ducked down a little bit, but they were both in the Iroquois costume, the beautiful, and I did all kinds of these tiny little dots on all those things. Bacon has it in the collection now, so that was one of my pieces I was really proud of. So. It won the show that year.
It did at Philbrook, or?
No, at Bacon.
At Bacon.
Mm-hmm.
Did you ever get to enter anything at Philbrook?
No, I
think that would have been towards the end of the, well, no, it would have been.
They stop doing those
They didn't
shows?
stop actually until 79, 82.
Well, see, this was.
But this was
79 and 80.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Hmm. No, I never did do a Philbrook.
Right. And Ruthie Blaylock Jones, I guess, was another teacher who was there while you were there.
Teacher, you're right. She was very laid back, and kind of just let you kind of do work on your own mainly. And of course, I liked Ruthie's work real well, but I didn't really develop that. You know, like with Dick, I was just like, I love that man. You know, I just really love that man. And Ruthie was nice, but she wasn't the born teacher like he was. So.
Who were some of your classmates that continued on with their artwork?
I don't think any of them did. There was a young man that came later, but I think that might have been one of my judges show up there, Daniel Horsechief. He does wonderful work, and his sister Mary. They were really good artists. So I don't really know of anybody else. I was contemporary with several others, but that's not who I went to school with.
Right.
Of course, I was an older student. So.
Did your uncle ever get to see any of your work after you had started painting?
When I was first started painting and everything, yes, he did. And he was, he said to paint what you understand and what you know. I said, okay. And I didn't quite understand what he meant at the time, but I have recently. And then he didn't say a whole lot, because Willard was kind of quiet too. But his daughters, after he died, they said, we got so tired of hearing your name from Daddy. Why don't you paint? Jeannie's painting. So that made me feel better.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah. And you were doing the flat style, working primarily in gouache or tempera or
I
acrylics?
started with watercolor and gouache.
Watercolor and gouache.
And then I took a little workshop over at Cherokee National Museum with Troy Anderson. And Troy said, I want you to use acrylics. I said, I'll never use acrylics. He said, when we get through this class, you're going to use acrylics. And I never went back to watercolor again. The difference between, because you can use acrylics like watercolor. You know, you wet them and everything, wet on wet and everything. And what's so great about it is that after you get, say you get some of that effect that you like, then you put something on top of it, and guess what? It doesn't mess it up. Very forgiving, very forgiving. And I have never used acrylic like most people think of it, putting it on a palette, you know, the tubes on the palettes and stuff. I never have used it like that. And Troy told me about using, you get pill bottles from a pharmacy and put a marble in it and some water, and then you mix your colors the way you want them from tube paints. And that's why I have such different colors, because I mix all my own colors. I never use it straight out of the tube. And now you couldn't hardly find the pharmacy started putting on those childproof caps and all that stuff. And so I now use urine sample bottles. Would put 2 marbles, a little bit bigger. That's my main
That's a great
medium.
little tip there.
Yeah.
Do you remember approximately what year that was that you took the
I
watercolor?
was trying to think. Must have been 84, maybe 1984, something like that. Because I did Young Widow's Journey in '85, and that won a lot of awards, and that was one of my earlier acrylic pieces.
So are you, while you're a student, you're entering competitive shows. Are you doing booth shows as well?
No.
Okay, just entering shows.
There wasn't really such a thing back then. There were gallery shows. You know,
What were some of your
artists.
early galleries?
The art market in Tulsa. I think everybody went to the art market in Tulsa. But it wasn't a market, you know, it was just a gallery. And she'd have showings, and there were about, I'd say, 7 or 8 artists would be there. And they were really a lot of fun. And I got acquainted with a lot of the artists there that I still have good friendships with.
And this was sort of the time, too, when some women artists were starting. They were still by far in the minority, but some women artists were starting to emerge. Who were some of the women artists that you admired? Or
Val Jean Hessing, like I mentioned before. Joan, oh my gosh, Joan Brown, yes, Brown. She had a very unique style, very had humor and everything, and those real touching little small paintings that she did. And Jane Malden, I loved her work. And Ruthie, I liked Ruthie's work. Trying to think of, there weren't that many of us out there. Anyway, you were talking about women. I've had, over the years, you just don't know how many times I've answered the question about why do you paint only women, you know? And my usual comments like, why shouldn't I? You know, to get back at them. And then they ask about why I do so many pregnant women and women with babies and stuff. And I said, well, pregnancy is the most wonderful time in a woman's life, I think. And the hands, the places where you can put hands, and they're so meaningful, around that stomach and on that stomach and under that stomach, it's just a great thing to paint, I think. So anyway, I got off the subject. So.
That's neat. Thanks for sharing that. At some point, you decide you're going to get a master's or a degree in graphic art at Northeastern. Is that right?
Northeastern. That's a little story. I got my Associate of Arts degree in art back home. And then I went to Northeastern State University in Tahlequah to enroll, and I met it's not even doctor, it's Mr. Coons over there. I don't remember his first name. And I was 30 years old, and I didn't like the guy. I just didn't like the guy. And the hair on my back of my neck kind of stood up, and then I saw some of his artwork, and it was so dark and medieval and gloomy. And I just did not want to be around this person. He never did anything to me. I just had my, you know.
He was head of the art department?
Yes.
Or? Okay.
And then they said, well, what about art education? And I met Dr. Schmidt. She was a very, I was telling you, looked like she could have clicked her heels together, you know. She was a very German lady. And I thought, I don't want to teach art, I want to do art. You know, there's a big difference. And I was looking in the school catalog. I just saw graphic arts with anything with art in it, you know. So I went to the head of that department, and it was Dr. Ruby, and it was industrial arts with graphic arts. And so that's why I have my degree in Bachelor of Science in Graphic Arts. And I learned so much, not art, but with my art, my talent for art combined with the graphics industry. It was a real knack. But you know, I learned one of my best art lesson was the focal point. When you design an ad, you lead whoever's looking at you, lead their eye to stay within that boundary, and for them to end up with a focal point for that advertisement. And it's the same thing with a painting. And that's my theory anyway.
So it was valuable. It fed into your
Very.
artwork by.
And then I was at that point too that I was going to start reproducing my work. You know, have prints made, and a lot of printing companies. When that artist is going to come in, they're like, "Oh my gosh," you know, because if you're real artsy, you don't understand that there are limits to what they can do, and. I in my career, I would go in the back. I could talk to the press operators. I knew what they were doing. I could understand it. It was a real good education for me.
From your graphic arts background.
Yeah. I understand a lot more. So
I can.
And I know more about. And I'm cheap. When I was doing prints, I would find the printing company that had the largest sheet size that they could run, and then I didn't do just one image. I laid it out to where I could do like one large image, a couple medium images, and some little ones on the side, because I knew they could do it. And I would lay it out and size them to where they could do that.
So at this point, your art's still kind of supplementing your income. When did you decide you were going to, did you get a job in graphic or commercial art after?
I got a couple of jobs right out of college in graphic arts at a couple of advertising agencies. And
in Tahlequah or?
No, one in Muskogee and one in Tulsa. I did my internship in Tulsa at advertising up there, and met some interesting people. And then I would still enter competitions while I was working. And I was making more money in the graphics arts, you know, the commercial end of it. But when I would win an award with my work, it meant so much more. So I did the graphics for probably 2.5 years maybe before I just went straight full-time with fine art. But I did a lot of work with Jimmy Lake. I don't know if you know, James C. Lake was an older gentleman in Muskogee. He had, his wife was part of a Griffin grocery company, so he had money. And I did some graphics for him, and he was very flamboyant, older gentleman with white hair, and he wore white suits. And he was so creative, though, in marketing. He's the one that came up with the Green Country, for Green Country, Oklahoma. He owned Channel 8 in Muskogee and Tulsa. And that when he was in charge, they had such creative advertising and everything. I really admired him. And he was another older gentleman that really tried to intimidate people. You know, I'd go to a meeting. Here I am, I was 31 or something. And he'd try to bully everybody at the table. And I was the only one that talked back to him. Because first of all, I'm not going to live my life for that, you know, and I just buck up to him like I would if I was, you know, like I did in the barn if Daddy was chasing a cow wrong or something. I'd buck up to my father. So.
You knew how to do that.
Yeah.
So what was one of the early awards that just was especially meaningful to you?
The Bacon, the Best of Show at Bacon. And then I was absolutely shocked when I won Trail of Tears at the Cherokee National Museum in Tahlequah. You know, it used to be a huge show. Do you remember?
Yes.
And I thought they said the wrong thing when I went up, and it was a painting called Young Widow's Journey. And that was the first painting that I feel like was given to me. I mean, it was just, I was driving home from Tahlequah one night, and I saw it, and this voice says, and I think God told me that, and it was like, this will open many doors for you. But I saw, as soon as I got home, I did a real rough little sketch and kept it beside the bed. And that was the only painting that I had literally saw it before I painted it. And it did. It opened so many doors.
So it won first place in painting.
They got the Trail of Tears award.
I was wondering if it was the Trail of Tears.
It was sold that night, and then they used it for the poster for the next year. And the judge, I don't know if there's a judge at that show or the next year's show, happened to be the editor for Southwest Art Magazine. And so that painting got me an article, a feature article in Southwest Art Magazine. That was in '89, right before the act.
That's wonderful. So let's talk a little bit, I guess, about the Indian Arts and Crafts Act.
Can I interrupt?
Sure.
Trail of Tears. I won that for 3 years straight. It was just shocking. I mean, I did in the Young Widow's Journey. She's actually breastfeeding a baby, and has a little boy laying beside her. But it talks about the fact that most Trail of Tears pieces are in the wintertime, and they also went in different sections, you know. And part of the time there was the heat, or even the heat in the fall. And it talks about the humidity and her trying to take care of herself enough to support her child at her breast, and also take care of her young child that's with her, that was what it was about. Anyway, I did the next year was Pregnant Lady, and then the third one, there's another artist, is my kind of a contemporary, Anita Caldwell Jackson. That third year, she got a little snippy about it. She said, well, breastfeeding, pregnancy, what's next year, conception? And I said, maybe. Anyway, I went in that 5 different times.
That's a wonderful story, yeah. So, all in the painting division.
Yeah, all in the painting division.
So I was going to ask also how the Native art scene changed from the 80s to the 90s in terms of...
It was sad. Changed a lot.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the Arts and Crafts Act first, I guess. Requiring that artists be certified by their tribe. Do you remember how that impacted artists and galleries?
Oh, everybody was scared to death because it was the fine. You know, if you were a gallery or a museum, you could be fined from $1 to $5 million. And it was real confusing for everybody because those of like me, like Willard wasn't enrolled. My parents both could have enrolled as young people, or my grandparents, I should say. They were young adults at the time of the roll, and they didn't sign on either side. And there were, if you know the history, you know there's lots of reasons not to sign it. And so it was really very confusing because most people, everybody knew that we had Cherokee blood. But like Willard, you know, he'd done the Trail of Tears, like the logo and everything for the thing that the tribe uses. And to say that his, you know how we found out about the act? We had no clue. You talk about innocent. We were just going about our business, you know. And then the Muskogee Phoenix newspaper has a big, huge, bold headline that Indian, let's see, I've got it somewhere. Indian art fraud, big bold letters, and it was a lot of it was about my family, the Stones, and it was just like an attack, and that's how we were treated. So it went on and on. But
and You don't know if that was like an individual reporter that just
Oh yeah,
took it on to...
she was, her name was Donna Hales, and she loved scandal. And that's how she is. She wasn't a trained journalist, which I had a discussion with her later about, but she was really, she'd made buddies with a guy named John Guthrie and David Cornsilk, and they were all very, it was so emotional to have somebody tell you that you weren't what you are, that you, well, yeah, you are, but you can't say you are, and you couldn't sell artwork and say the truth. And it was really hard. And one of the articles that she wrote at one time talked about the Stones, that my grandparents didn't even come into this area until, what date she said. And I called the newspaper first, and she finally called me back late one night. And I said, who are you talking about? Who have you talked to? And she said, well, so-and-so. And I said, I don't know who that is. She had the wrong Stone family, because my grandparents were married in Oktaha in 1902. So, I mean, it was just so sloppy. Journalism used to have a real, what would you call it, honor about it, which I don't see anymore. But anyway, she was like she was after us hot and heavy. And then she was after the museum, Muskogee. A lot of the museums stood up for us, though, which was great.
And how did you work through that? How did you deal with the emotional?
Well, I fought. I'm a fighter. So we went to, I was on the newspapers. We had a real momentum going for a while to fight it nationwide. Even there was a guy that did a political column called James Kilpatrick, real well known, and he even wrote about it and had me in his column. And then the Thomas Jefferson Center out of Charlottesville, Virginia, which was they stood up for the First Amendment. They contacted me, and they set up a panel discussion in D.C. And they had me come, flew me and my sister out and to speak against the law. Well, it was me and I don't remember that guy's name. There were about 10 of us, 2 of us against the law, and the rest of them were for the law. And he had, I don't know what he did. He was drinking so much coffee that he was just, didn't even hardly make sense. He was so hyped up, and I just want to say, just be quiet, let me do the talking. But it was an interesting panel, because I knew the history, and anybody that knows the history of tribes, especially the 5 tribes, one row, and everything. So I did have that discussion, and then the state of Oklahoma was having a discussion at the state capitol. And Jason Stone and his wife, my cousin and his wife, and I was so glad that Willard had died, because it would have broken his heart what happened. But we were going to Oklahoma City to meet with the Capitol to have a hearing, because to fight this thing, where the state of Oklahoma would stand up against it. And we got to noticing black Suburbans with big antennas and everything on I-40 as close we got to Oklahoma City. I thought, what the heck's going on? Well, it was the morning that they attacked the first Iraq Desert Storm. Was that day. So all the momentum that we had going was just forgotten about.
Wow.
And then years later, people say, oh, I thought that was, I didn't think that was still going on. It's like, yeah, it's still going on. Then I had, you want me to tell you what I guess the 1990? Past in 90 or 91?
1990, I think.
Okay. And I guess it was 92 or later. I had an FBI agent come to the house, because have you heard any of this story with
No.
me and the FBI?
No.
I told you if you Google that act, you'd find my name. In the middle of the afternoon in July, somebody rang the doorbell. And you know where we live out here, it's like we don't have company. And my granddaughter was here, and she ran to the door, and she said, "Mom, Grandma, a man's here." And it was an FBI agent. I had no idea. I mean, this was out of the blue. And his name was Dion. I can't remember his last name. He was a full-blood. He was a one. I've lucked out with so many times in my life of meeting good people. And he had already interviewed Chad Smith and Julian, he was the Attorney General for the tribe at Tahlequah. He had already talked to them about it, and they both took up for me, you know. So he when he got here, he interviewed me some and told me that they had charges that I had been misrepresenting myself. And of course, everybody knew what I was, and I'd been out everywhere fighting this thing. So, and if anybody asked me if I was Cherokee, I would be very clear about it. You know, I'm not a Cherokee tribal member. But anyway, he said that had charges, or thinking that the Justice Department was doing an investigation. I said, what did I do? There was an undercover FBI agent at Red Earth in June.
Of that year.
Of that year. And after I saw him, well, I thought, I still don't remember saying or doing anything, you know. So, when you get charged with something, they don't have to tell you anything. And it's scary. When you have a little taste of it, you really get a little paranoid about the government sometimes. But anyway, Dion was extremely nice, and he told me his history. He had 5 tribes in him, his blood, but he had to choose only one to be a member of, and he chose Caddo. But he had enough Creek, he had 5 different tribes. Nicest guy. He became he and his wife come to the next show I was at. He introduced me to her and his kids. Anyway, then the Justice Department sends me a letter wanting me to plea bargain. And I'm like, what did I do? Well, I call over there, you know, and it's a guy named Arvo Mikkonen, and he was assistant whatever over there in Oklahoma City. It had to be in the Oklahoma City district because that's where it happened. And he wouldn't tell me what I had done. So I finally made them. I said, I need to know what you're talking about. I'm not going to plea bargain to anything until I know what happened. And so JR and it's really a sad time. I'd lost my mom in January, and his mother had just died. So it was on the way to Kansas to her funeral that we stopped in Oklahoma City and had a meeting with Arvo Mikkonen and the FBI agent that was undercover. And his name was Agent Black. He was a big, tall, white guy, big guy. And as soon as I saw him, I remember seeing him before. And the way I violated the law is because he was going around looking at my work. Well, I wasn't very busy. It's kind of early. And he was talking. He said, why do you paint corn? I said, well, the Cherokees, like the southeastern tribes, are very agricultural. You know, there's a lot of corn. He said, why do you paint corn? I said, well, I'm part Cherokee, and that was in the conversation. That was a violation. And then he bought a $5 magnet. I have magnets with paper from me, and said for his friend, who was Cherokee. He said, "Go buy for his friend." And I signed my name. Had me asked if I signed my name. Then he left, and he came back, and we were extremely busy by that time. Had lots of customers. And he kind of interrupted me and asked, would you mind putting your tribe on there, because it meant a lot to my friend. So I wrote Cherokee, 2 violations. And then they went to my website, and I had Cherokee written one time without it being the descent or ancestry. So there was 3 violations of a very, very bad act. And so during that conversation, JR had to hold me down a couple of times.
I bet.
I was so aggravated. This Arvo Mikkonen is half Finnish, well, from Finland, and half Kiowa. Let's see, Comanche and Kiowa, and because he claims, he claimed both tribes. I'm thinking you shouldn't do that, Anyway, I said, well, what can I say? And well, we can't tell you what you can say. And I said, can I say Cherokee descent? He said, yes, you can say that. I said, Cherokee ancestry? And he said, yes. I said, can I say I have Cherokee blood? No, you can't say that. I said, what the blankety blank do you think ancestry and descent means? And that was just like this guy, and he wasn't budging. I mean, he wanted to come after me hard. And I asked him, I said, if I plea bargain to this, then this is a felony. I said, would I lose my right to vote in this country? And he said, well, yes. And I said, I am never losing my right to vote in this country. So I decided I had to get an attorney, which was a waste of money.
But eventually they dropped the charges, or you came to an agreement.
I did how was it? After spending about $4,000 trying to educate an attorney to fight this, because people they don't know anything.
Right.
They really don't. And he spent all my retainer, just learning. He sent one letter to Mikkonen and waited for the answer. And after my retainer was gone, I just get these little bills for $75 every week. And I finally called this attorney. I said, what's this $75 for? He said, well, when we have an open case, we discuss it every week if anything's going on about it, if there's not within. I said, Richard, I can't afford this. I said, you put my file on the shelf, and I said, you don't think about it, you don't talk about it, you don't do anything about it until something's going on. And so that stopped the drain of money for a while, but I finally ended up doing I probably wouldn't have, except JR taught me into it, because I was still wanting to fight it. A pre-trial diversionary probation, which was supposed to wipe it off.
Wiped it off.
But to do this, I had to have my fingerprints made. And so we go to Muskogee. There's supposed to be an appointment with the FBI in Muskogee. They did let us do all this in Muskogee, which is much, so much closer. And so Jared and I go up there one morning into where the FBI is supposed to be. They had no idea why I was there. I had the 9 o'clock appointment. And nobody knew why I was there. Nobody knew anything about it. And he said, well, I'll call. And he comes back and he said, well, I can't get any of them to answer the phone. I said, doesn't that concern you? I thought that was funny. It wasn't funny to him. So we made another appointment. And so the U.S. Attorney's Office is going to make my fingerprints. And so they did the fingerprints. And I said, no, the second time. Anyway, that wasn't enough for them, for Arvo out there over in Oklahoma City. They wanted my not only my fingerprints, but also my palm prints. Very dangerous. So I had to go a third time and had to get the palm print done. And this little FBI agent was there that time. He's just a little giggly young man. And he said, and when I got to the middle finger on my left hand, I said, you can tell Arvo that's for him. And when I got to the middle finger on my right hand, I said, and you can tell Agent Black that's for him.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, so I ended up having to get I did the probation. You're supposed to have a house, some visit your home, and everything. I ended up getting the woman who was over all federal probations in Oklahoma. And she looked at it, I guess. I never got to meet the woman, just talked to her on the phone. And she said, I don't see that anything's necessary here for me to have to do a deal. She said, why don't we just let you do you can just send a report in once a month for 6 months. I said, okay.
Mhm.
And then I had to do a community service, which I thought was a punishment, right? Anyway, there's a real nice place called Kids Space in Muskogee that takes care of children with court systems and stuff. And I had done some volunteer work for them before, just donations and things. And so the director up there, I shouldn't say this, it's over, right? So she just wrote down I did so many hours at a time. We turned that in. So anyway, so but I became a member of a state-recognized tribe in Alabama. So that covers me for the law.
That's an amazing
right now
story. The other changes in the 90s, seems like the market wasn't quite as strong.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't.
Did you do any adapting in terms of
changing
how you handled your marketing, or?
It's kind of like, I guess was it an oil boom in the 80s or something? So I kind of missed all that. So. And then the law, I think it stopped me over a year painting.
From producing.
And I felt like Bill Glass and some of the others, Mike Daniel, they crucified Mike Daniel. I mean, just because I can't remember, he was adopted, so they didn't think he should be able to claim his heritage. There were some real witch hunts out there, and Bill Glass tried so many times to set up a committee to try to have a hearing, get the tribe to straighten it up, and I told him, I said, Bill, you're going to get your heart broken. So, and he did. And when they put in the law that you could be a tribal member or a certified artisan, okay, I said when they put that in the law, they'll never do that for anybody. And they haven't. Because I said if they do that, they'll admit that they are not, all the people of that race or that tribe are not tribal members. I said they're never going to admit that, not in writing or anything official. So that was never taken. It wouldn't have passed, I don't think, if they hadn't had that in there. But they didn't do it. But what'd you ask me? I'm sorry. If I'd have changed marketing.
Some of the other changes in the 90s, did you, art's such a two-person business.
Yes, it is.
And I wondered if you'd talk a little bit about, you had met JR, you had remarried. What role does he play in your business?
Big role, because he's a natural little retail guy. He really is. When he was in the military, he was stationed in Turkey for a while, and he, in his base, real remote base up on a mountain, he created like a BX or PX, whatever you call it. He has created a store, got to buying, selling, and everything, and they made all kinds of money for him. So it's always been in his blood, and he didn't get to do much of it in the military. But he's real good with organization, and I'm more organized than most artists are, and I've got a pretty good business head. So between the two of us, I say he's left-handed, I'm right-handed. He's male, I'm female. We'll go round and round and round, but we always end up at the same place, what to do business-wise. And we added, things were slowing down a lot in the 90s, and I still had lots of prints and things. One of the things he did when we got married, he said, you're going to sit down, you're going to sign and number all these prints. I said, oh my gosh, and it took days. But it was the best thing we did, because you don't have to wonder what number you're on, and we packaged them up in envelopes and certain groups and things, and it's all organized. I still do. I still appreciate it every time I get a print up to sell. But we've discovered with Tracy Rabbit and Bill, Tracy's married to my cousin now, but back then Tracy found this sublimation printing for tiles, and she was looking it up, and her and JR got to talking, and we started, I think it was in January, February, did the Tulsa show, And we didn't have any equipment at that time. Tracy made us 2 or 3 tiles. And they sold as soon as people saw them. So we invested in, didn't need a lot of money, but I went to the bank. I had all this proposal typed up, prospective of what we could make out of it, which was very low. I mean, it was lowballed. And I don't know if you've ever dealt with banks with art. Bankers don't understand art. And he got up there, have all this stuff put together and everything. Was looking for about $5,000, I think, which you get as a press and a print and stuff. And the banker says, "Jeannie, you still got that old tractor?" I said, "Yeah." "Well, let's just put that on there." So we still have a tractor on my line of credit's always had a tractor on it.
Based on the tractor.
Never
That's
art.
amazing.
Never art.
That's amazing.
I know.
Yeah, those tiles are wonderful. We're going to take a look at one
Okay.
towards the end of the interview.
It's been great, though.
Let's talk a little bit about, you've done illustration work several times, I guess. Or is this Crossing the Book Chitto your first kind
It's
of
the
venture?
first.
Okay, will you tell me how that project came about?
Oh, it's funny. I was at Red Earth Festival in Oklahoma City. It's been out when they moved it to the fairgrounds. And this guy comes by the booth. I have no idea who he is. And he asked me if I'd be interested in illustrating a children's book. And I was kind of busy. So I hope I wasn't impolite to him, but I kind of let it go in one ear and out the other because I've had other people ask me to do children's books, and I just think I don't paint cutesy, And it was Tim Tingles who was talking to me, and he did the storytelling that year, and Tim, I guess he thought I wasn't really listening, so he calls his publisher. Because he had gotten the right to find an artist, and which is unusual.
That is very unusual. They must have really.
And so he comes back and he says the editors and them said if I did this, this, and this, that they'd look at it. And I was like, yeah, that is, one ear at the other. And then he comes back. He had picked up my brochure and he gave the website to the publishers over the phone, and they looked at it, and he came back about 50 minutes later, and he told me what he'd done. He said, they said if you want it, you got it. So my ego was rubbed in, I guess. And so he gave me a CD that he had made with that story on it, and after we loaded up Sunday night, we were going home, and I put that CD in. I heard that story and I started crying, and I thought, if I'm ever going to do a children's book, this is it, because it was just right. It was very human, emotions. It had a great storyline to it. It just a surprise ending, and it was just it is a wait till you read it. It's a great story, and I was very proud to get to do it. It's a lot of work.
I bet, because how do you approach it differently from just...
Well, they told me, some of the people, when I won some awards, from it, that some of the Publishers Weekly and some of the, what do you call it, reviews, and this whole book world's a whole other animal to me, but they said that each page was a piece of art. And I guess that was how I felt. I was trying to tell a story like I do in my paintings.
Through a series.
But each one of them I wanted to have. And you have to think of, you can't put anything, it was a two-page spread. And you can't put anything important in the middle, because that's the gutter. So you can't do that. And you have to figure out an area where the type can be. And I argued with the publisher a little bit about, I said, I don't want just a big white blob, in the middle of the painting. And so all the print, it's got the painting behind it. It's transparent behind the print.
Wow.
And, but anyway, it was, the publishers were a little weird, but anyway, I'd done 3 paintings before I finally signed the contract because I wasn't sure if I was going to deal with them or not. So
Is that right?
yeah.
And I know Crossing Book Chitto won you, the Illustrator of the Year for Oklahoma in 2007, and the Jane Addams and Caldecott Award.
Well, I didn't get the Caldecott.
Oh, that's right.
Notable.
It was a notable.
Right.
Right. It's won another award, though, hasn't it?
It's won a lot of, but Jar keeps track of the number. He says 26 awards. I can't remember.
My goodness, that's wonderful.
But it really has got a lot of good publicity.
Well, and I think you were a wonderful choice for that because I remember when you started incorporating African American women in your paintings of Cherokee women. Mm-hmm. And of course, there's all that history, but I know, I'm just wondering what the reception was like. I'm wondering.
Oh, when I first started the Sister Series, I did Trail Sisters for the Trail of Tears show, and it didn't win anything.
And you want to describe the image for us?
The image is a black woman. She has a turban on, and an Indian, a Cherokee woman, and the Cherokee woman is pregnant, and they're holding hands. And I talk about their sisters on the trail, because there were a lot of blacks who were on the Trail of Tears. Because not only did they have slaves in the Southeast, they also were mixed bloods and also friends. I mean, they were all together, you know. And the best explanation, this little old lady at a college in Missouri, Cape Girardeau, Missouri.
Cape Girardeau.
They had me come and talk about the Sister Series one time at this college, and this little old lady who'd written a little pamphlet type book called the Tears of the Trail. She raised her hand. She asked me if she could interrupt me for a moment. I said, please do. And she said the difference between slaves with white people on slaves, that the whites or Europeans, they own that person. With the Indians who had slaves, they own that person's work. And I thought that was the most enlightening thing to me, and I'm so glad that lady told me about that. But the Trail Sisters got a little strange reception at Tahlequah that year. But I had it had that one, and I'd added, at Day's End, I think. The next year, I entered one that was called Harvest Visit. And it's just a small little painting. It's 6 inches by 10 inches, and then framed for that. And it was a Indian woman carrying corn, and the black woman shelling the corn in the cornfield together. And it won Best of Show, Best of Painting that year. And I was really surprised because it's a small painting, and so it got a good reception. But the people have asked me why I did it, and I said, well, being raised here in eastern Oklahoma in the country, I said every black family I know has part Indian blood. It's either Creek or Cherokee mostly. My mom's best friend was half Cherokee and half black, and my dad, one of his very best friends was Zach Robinson, and I think Zach had a little bit of Creek Indian in him, but that was the only time my sister and I would be milking, be eating. If Zach came, boy, you didn't get any work out of my dad because they sat and talked the whole time. But I had so much respect for the black families in this area, and we worked together in the fields. I mean, they came and we hired them, and they had their own fields and things, but they would work for us too. And so we were working together. There was no I don't know, I just wasn't raised. They were called, my mom and dad called them colored, not black. Black was kind of a newer thing. But so the Sister Series, which the name Sister Series came at Red Earth that year. I had several pieces there, and this black woman, a little bit older, came up, and I've had when people cry and thank me for painting them, and she said, do you have any small ones of the Sister Series? And I said, no ma'am, but you just named it, because she's the one that gave me that name. And but it's gotten a lot of national attention. It's even been used in a lot of books. Different images have been used in different books and get my permission. There was one called the Illustrated Atlas of North American, Native Americans, and it's a beautiful atlas, color, and they use Harvest Visit as their section on Black Indians because nobody else is out there painting it, and I don't know why. I mean, Black Indians are very well known now. They do videos and they do music and everything, but I don't see the paintings anywhere else. And anyway, it's been
wonderful.
I've been very proud of that series.
Wonderful series. What are your most important shows these days?
Rio Grande show into Albuquerque, and Red Earth changed rules on me a couple years ago, about 3 years ago, and they decided they didn't like tiles, and they didn't like coasters, and they didn't like cutting boards, and they didn't like this. Well, the market, everybody knows about the economy now, and for the last 10 years, the art market, if you didn't have something affordable, you could sit there all day and maybe not sell anything. And most people can't afford original artwork. So that's the one main thing that Joe and I have done in the past few years, and we've produced my work, like on the tiles. I was talking about Tracy and everything, but the tiles, we have developed it so much, and being the wife of an artist, you can understand, I can paint something, and in 20 minutes, if it's small enough to get on the scanner, we can have a tile and see what it looks like on tiles. It is so much fun. In this process, the ink actually turns to gas, but it keeps all that fine detail. And so it's just been a great way to market my work. And
It's allowed you to keep painting.
Yes, and it's kind of like residual income. You do a painting and you could reproduce it yourself in different ways. And it also opened up the gift market, because a lot of gift shops are not going to handle prints and things, but they will handle tiles, and it's gotten my name out nationwide. So it's I have calls every once in a while say, I was at the Phoenix airport and I picked up this little tile,
And I want some more.
And I always have a label with contact information in the back of every tile we sell. So it's been a real good thing.
What are you currently working on now?
Right now, I kind of adapted since I had a stroke last year, but I'm painting. I had the idea. I did a couple of banners for the Muskogee Azalea Festival, and I've done banners for them for a lot of years. You paint on a banner and they auctioned off after the festival's over. And I always was loose with them, to paint freely. I'm thinking I'm giving this away to be loose and stuff, but I really like what I paint. And so I did 2 of them. It's the first real paintings I tried to do since I had a stroke, and I like.
And they're pretty big. Must be pretty big.
Yeah, they're pretty big. And anyway, I thought, well, that's an idea. What if I had another little market glitch besides the Native American art? And of course, I love to paint barns and things too, but if people would have a piece of artwork for outside, like on their patio, so many people are doing the outdoor living areas with the kitchens and everything now. And so that's been the latest thing I'm working on. And sold over 3 of them so far. And I just started about 3 weeks ago.
So kind of outdoor banner.
Well, I thought about
Decorative.
making banners, and I thought, well, then you have to sew this and do this and wonder how they're going to hang it. And I decided we made stretcher bars out of the fake deck material, cut it up and made a stretcher bar, so that's waterproof and weatherproof. So they're kind of heavy too for the Oklahoma wind and everything. And then we stretched the banner material, stretched that around those bars, and then put 2-inch blue tape, like if you're painting, around that on the face. And I'm using a lot of different exterior house paints, because on the banners I did from Muskogee, I used our barn, red barn and fence paint. I used the house paint. I used our trim paint. Because I'm cheap, I wasn't going to use my good acrylics on their stuff. And so I started incorporating kind of a little bit of my acrylics with it. But the house paints actually were their exterior. And then you pull the tape off and it looks like they're matted. around them.
That's a really great idea.
Anyway, so that's my newest thing.
That's a great idea. Well, let's talk a little bit about your creative process and techniques. You've talked in an article I think I read about how your style is kind of based on the flat style, but you've adapted it for your own use. And you've introduced, I think, some more decorative kind of expressionistic type elements. But let's talk first about how you've kind of adapted it. How have you adapted the flat style?
A little shading, a lot of shading on the faces and the hands, and even in the blankets and the shawls and things. I've got shading on them, and that's so that's away from pure flat style.
Right.
There's still. That's one of the things that I think got people's attention with the book about Chitto paintings, because they're basically the flat style also. And they hadn't seen that before, so.
Right.
Of course, I love trees, and my bare trees, and I call them moons, but some people call them suns. But people ask me, why did you paint a black moon? I said, well, I don't paint a black, but a deep plum,
Right, right.
But it's whatever color goes with what I'm trying to paint, so it's fun.
And how has your palette changed? Because I think that's purples are.
Well, the oils, I do oils and acrylics now, and I started doing oils just a long time ago, but they're mostly landscapes, and usually I have a figure in there, at least one, and I love doing the oils with them. They're a brighter, deeper, richer look to them, and I love doing, it's a challenge, but doing water and the reflections in the water.
On the oils.
Yeah, with the oils, yeah. I've done it with acrylics, but it has a little different effect with the oils.
So on the watercolors, then sometimes you'll have this effect of, it almost looks like batik with your use of watercolor, and you are painting wet on wet.
Yeah, it's acrylics.
I'm sorry, it was acrylics.
Yeah, it is wet on wet, and it's so much fun to just see what happens, with the. Just what happens with the paints. And I had when was it? Everybody was using airbrush. Remember when R.C. Gorman went to airbrush? I didn't like anything he painted after that. I loved his pastels. But I bought an airbrush, and I couldn't stand it. It's too controlled, and you just do one color at a time. And I thought, I don't even like washing dishes, much less clean this thing out every time I want to change color. And I like that effect of wet on wet, and just put several colors in there and see what happens. And you can't do that with an airbrush. So I wasted money on an airbrush, and it was never used again. But I like the wet on wet. A lot of my paintings, I start with the whole background, and I do wet on wet. Sometimes I will circle the moon. People say, how do you get a moon so round? It's like, I use a template. So why not? And so I decide if I'm going to keep the washed colors or the background. And if I keep the background washed colors, I paint the moon a solid color. And then if I don't, I circle the moon, leave the wash there, and I put in a solid color in the background for the sky. My trees with my acrylics are all flat. They're just, they're never shaded. And then I don't know, sometimes I don't know what I'm going to paint. Like I said, Young Little Strange, the only painting I ever saw before I got it done. So.
Right. There's another effect that you got that it almost looks like a granular. It looks like it's granular, but it doesn't have a texture, of course. It's flat, and I didn't know if you might be using a wax crayon or something. Very interesting. Maybe it's just
you mean the oils?
Wet on wet. It's on the acrylics. But it would make small little circles that would appear.
Well, I probably painted those circles. That's what I taught Anita.
Very small ones?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I use tiny little liner brushes and do dots. Yeah,
And
so
then let those be wet on wet, kind of.
No, usually I have my background.
They were kind of transparent, like little moons throughout. And maybe it was in the printing.
I don't know.
Drafting skills are obviously important to you, and I've seen some really nice sketches in your studio. Do you do a lot of preliminary sketches?
When I'm doing hands and everything, I do a lot of. I try to do the sketches and then put those on tracing paper, and then sometimes if I get that the way I want it, then I'll do the graphite paper and press that onto the canvas or the watercolor board what I'm painting on, just to get the main features and where they're going to be. So.
What kinds of research do you do for your paintings?
Like Native American books, about the some of the catalogs, not catalogs, I don't know what you call it, research books with baskets, and the clothing I've more or less just kind of come up with on my own. I used to try to do the real detail. I've got a card called Iroquois Legend. It has an old wampum belt in the background, and then she's laying there with a hand over her belly. She's pregnant. She's kind of reclining. And I had a dark blue background, solid, and then I was doing little dots for that wampum. I got about halfway through that, and I thought, what have I gotten started? I think I was never going to finish that painting. But so I did a lot of research like that, and lots of my paintings now, any more just kind of happen. And one thing I do, I don't have any right now, but when people buy them, it's because the Cherokees and all the southeastern tribes were civilized. And when they got back to Oklahoma, they started building schools, and they dressed like everybody else. They had and I love the, if you ever see the female seminary photographs, and they've got the black and white dresses, the collars and the hair's put up or back, and I would love to do a whole series of those kind of paintings with the women like that. And another thing I really want to do, future, I want to do more, because being a farm girl, and we raised cotton. That was another thing we raised, and I really would love to do, say, a series of nothing but women in the fields, working together, and that's my goal in life. And I've always thought I've got to do something to be able to support myself, so I've got the time to paint enough paintings and not sell them. But I would love to do that.
That would be neat. What's your creative process from the time that you get an idea?
When you say process, I
Sort
don't
of
have
like,
anything structured, but
you have an image in your head, do you put it down on paper first? How does it, or does it depend?
One thing that J.R. found out when we got together is don't throw anything away. Because I have these little if the show's slow, when you're sitting there, I do little sketches on whatever paper I had at the table. I've written them on napkins. You just come up with kind of an idea of how to position a woman or hands or a painting, and I've done a lot of paintings with the backs, and they're stacked. It's a long, tall painting, but all you have to do is put one woman in front of another one, and it gives you that effect. And I think I came up with that one time I was setting another slow show. So,
so they're not neatly organized in a book. They're
no, not at all. And I never know. Jerry says, he says she'll have this quick little sketch and barely tell what it is, and said next thing I know she's got a big painting of it.
And what's your creative routine? Do you paint in the morning? Do you paint at night?
I have no routine. Never have. People used to say, what's your inspiration? I was so bad. I said, deadline.
Yeah. That's true for many artists.
Yeah.
Can you talk about how about the titles in your work? How do you
They're important. I write a lot of stories with all of the paintings. Sometimes it's hard to title. Sometimes some of them are very hard. Some just come just like that. They come so quick. but others are very difficult. And anymore, it's because we've got so many of the tile images that we're marketing now, and I use initials on the codes, to put them on the website. And so my sister works for us part-time, one of my sisters, and so sometimes when I cannot come up with a name, and all three of us are out there trying to think of something, but we already use those initials,
That's
so, it's not, you kind of know it when you hear it. Like I said, some of them come so easy.
And talk about your signature, because that's kind of an art, discovering how you want to sign your paintings.
Yes, it is. And Jared, we were married for 10 years before I put Rorex Bridges. So, see, Rorex, I was married to Kenneth Rorex for almost right at 25 years. So my career was with Rorex, and I used to be Jeanne Rorex, and then it was Jeanne Rorex, and then it was just Rorex, and now it's Rorex Bridges. And he said he had to prove himself for 10 years before I put his name on the painting. I said, no, I just couldn't figure out how to write it. So I went from the X with Rorex with the X at the end at the bottom. Now I do the R, and then I do the B and take the B down. So stick on
And
the
you
X.
use the syllabary too a little bit, don't you? In some of them? Or you don't? Okay.
You're probably looking at some of my older pieces.
Older pieces.
That my maiden name's Walker, and those are little footprints.
Oh, okay.
I've had a lot of people ask me what they were.
Okay.
And when I say footprints, then they can see it.
Oh, okay.
But
Yeah.
so I have a high instep. So.
That's neat. Looking back on your career, what's been one of the pivotal moments, do you think? Where you kind of could have gone one way maybe and you went another way? Or...
I think that going into the business, making the tiles, printing the tiles was a major step. My open house is something that I've had for years, and it's not easy to do an open house, but it is really good. I've got a mailing list. It's about 5,500 names on it now, and I send out postcards when I'm going to be in an area for a show. I do that. I think combining business and that kind of sense, marketing, to my work has been a real. It's been very important, because you can paint the best thing in the world, but if nobody sees it, you're not going to expand your name or anything. And so I send postcards out, and then for open house in July we do 2 weekends, and I make homemade cobblers, and Jerry and I make homemade ice cream, and we invite my entire mailing list, and we're going to be in deep trouble if half of them came. But sometimes we've had right at 10% over 2 weekends.
That's an amazing return on a mailing list.
It is. And it's such good advertising. And what I write on the back, I love to communicate in words too. And I always say something a little funny or unusual or something. But people over the years that have never been here, I'll see them again at a show out of state or whatever, and they say, don't stop sending me that card, so we're going to make it one of these years, But they really feel like it is a personal invitation, and I think that's great. And that's been a real, I think I could have gone the lazy way, just depend on somebody else to do it for me, but I was doing a lot of that myself. And Jared, our personalities work out really well together with that, so. He doesn't like to do the names and things, but I do. He makes sure that we have ink, and he makes sure we have supplies and things like that, which is good. So
that's a wonderful idea.
One of the best compliments I ever had over the years, I get it pretty often from different people, is that my work that makes them feel calm and peaceful. And I thought, what a compliment. That's just, they get a feeling from the work.
And what do you strive for with your artwork beyond that?
I don't know. I guess just human relationships, and there's just like I said about pregnant women. I love the hand placements and things, and children. I don't paint a lot of children, but for the parents, I do some, and I don't know what it is. Maybe I feel calm when I'm painting them. But the women with the bags going into the woods, you know, they're not complicated. And I don't know if the feeling that I have while I'm painting, because I'm just looking at them. To me, each one of them are a different person. I don't know why that is, but they're very quiet, and they know where they're going, no doubt. You know, they're not confused. I don't like chaos in a painting. Some people put so much in a painting that it's just you get tired of looking at it. You know, there's so much stuff in one painting, and that bothers me. I think that's where the advertising part of it, focal point, keep their eye, lead it, and say something. You know what you want them to see. So, but my paintings are pretty simple. So.
What has been one of the high points in your career?
I think the Trail of Tears show back then was really an honor to get to win that and to be participate in it. It was a really fun show years ago. We had the big dinner out under the trees, and the collectors had fun. I made such good friends, not only with artists but also with collectors. That was fun. I've learned over the years. I've made dear friends and with people that just come to shows. When you do booth shows, and people come to see you, and of course they're just become part of you, and they are. There's a lot of bad stuff in the world, but there's a whole lot of good stuff in the world. Lots and lots of good people who would do anything for you. So.
And what's been one of the low points in your career?
I would say the law. Being the law.
Yeah.
I've got a photograph of me in my studio in there. It's when I had my briefcase and I was in D.C. for that talk, and I wrote on the outside of my mat, "I fought the law and the law won." Because it's still there, you know. And they're trying to do away with the state-recognized tribes. That's what they're trying to take that out of it.
Mm-hmm.
It's such a shame. I mean, people shouldn't be jealous of each other, you know. And anyway.
Well, is there anything else you'd like to talk about or mention before we look at your artwork?
I think I've said a lot, so I can't believe I get to do what I do. So it's really a blessing.
We're glad you get to do that too.
Called Woodlands Moon. And that's one that I washed in the color where the moon is.
Uh-huh.
And then I picked out the area I liked, then I did a circle around that. And then I believe it or not, I put Scotch tape all around the edge of that moon.
Oh.
And I do paint the main color, was just kind of green.
Mm-hmm.
And I discovered sponge painting not too long ago, a few years ago. And so I do sponge painting. It's 2 or 3 different colors on top of that green. Can you see that?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And then I take the tape off of the moon, so it keeps that edge, because you can't control the sponges that well.
Right.
Anyway, then I paint in the trees, and I have the 2 figures, and it just looked like the Woodlands moon, the color.
Yeah. Oh, that's wonderful. Can you tell us about this piece?
Okay, this painting was an illustration for Oklahoma Today magazine, and they had contacted me. That was the second painting that I did. They had Wilma Mankiller doing a story. They come out every 3 months, I think, and they had her do a story, something about her area where she lived and memories. And the first one was I did an illustration with an older woman at the Strawberry Festival in Stillwell. And then she talked about another one. This one's for she mentioned going to church on a Sunday and in the church in the woods, and they'd be driving to church in springtime with dogwood trees. And so this painting is called Wilma's Dogwood. And I did the illustration, and we ended up doing tiles, and this is actually reproduced on a piece of metal in a tray. But I did that in honor of Wilma because she died not too long after that article came out.
That is a beautiful piece.
That was my dad, and it was I had taken a snapshot of him out under the maple tree. We always had this large shade tree in the front yard, and we had those old metal lawn chairs, you know, that kind of leaned back, and they were yellow or green or something, had the metal arms, and I caught him in a photograph, and he always, when he sat out there, he always had his pocket knife out, and he would strip the bark off of a little limb from that maple tree. And then he would he told the best stories, and he never told jokes, and he didn't tell lies. He just told stories about people, you know, over the years, and something that his father had done, or other people. But it was just an observation, you know, of people over the years. And I caught him telling a story, and he had that stick in his hand. And I called it conductor of the story because he looked like he's conducting it. Had his old boots on, you know, the kind that lace up kind of above your ankles, and overalls, and that was his standard attire. So
that's a great,
very, very interesting man.
Yeah, good.
Very intelligent, and a farmer and rancher. And he went to college for, I think he went to Connors College back in the 1930s. I don't even know if he finished one semester because he said he was going to take agriculture, and he figured out they couldn't teach him anything they didn't already know. He was real good with mathematics and stuff too. So I have a lot of respect for him. This one, everybody was waiting for me to do a drawing of my mom. It just never seemed right yet until one of my sisters had taken a snapshot of her and showed her hands. See how she's holding her hands, and that. I thought that's Mama. She worked so hard. Both of them worked so hard, and she was always working with being a farmer and rancher. She used to get aggravated because people would think that she was a housewife, and Daddy was a farmer and rancher. She was a farmer and rancher too because she did just as much for the farm and ranch as he did. So, and then of course in the house, and she made the best fried potatoes. Even her great-grandchildren would talk about them when she was still able to cook. About the best fried potatoes. And the biggest compliment you could get is if you fried potatoes and one of them would say, "That tastes like Grandma's." So she was a pretty, pretty woman. She had just a pretty face and always cared about her looks. So she always wanted to make sure her hair was fixed, you know, and everything. She never went to a beauty shop. One of those girls was always taking care of her hair.
She is a handsome woman.
Very sweet lady.
And this one is one of your oils.
Yes, it's called Journey Reflection. I love doing landscapes in oils because I play with color again. It's a different feel than the acrylics. On my canvas, I'll do an undercoat of either Indian red or burnt umber. I saw that in a little cheap book one time. We got that major tip from a cheap little book. Anyway, do a turpentine in that wash over the whole canvas. That ties your painting together. But I put white in the sky, and I start putting colors in there. And I do any color I'm thinking about putting in the ground. I try to get some of that up in the sky too. And trying to figure out how to do a cloud and everything. But I never know. But I always have a little purple mountain in the background. And trees, just do like a little stipple brush. But you always think of the distant to what's farthest away and then come to you in a painting. And but when I'm doing the sky, I'll be cleaning my brush out down in the foreground where the water's going to be, because all those colors need to be in water and in the sky. But I do the trees with a palette knife now. The first oil painting I did with trees, I used a little flat brush, and I each little tree had brush strokes blending the white and the black together. I didn't think I was ever going to get finished. I found out about a palette knife, so my trees are all palette knife now.
Yeah, and that creates a neat effect.
And then I use a palette knife on the blankets now too. I like this because it's got the two women. The main woman in the bright red has a baby in her arms. And then it's a challenge to do it, but I love painting reflections in the water. So.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Jeannie.
Thank you, Julie. It's been fun. I've known you a long time, so it's been even more fun.